Welcome to episode 17 of the Imperial Tides podcast. I'm your host, Holden, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Simone. And today we're going to be talking about the 1983 film Nostalgia, directed by the great Russian master, as they say, Andrei Tarkovsky. To start, I will take you through a basic summary of everything that happens in the movie, and from there we'll move on to our initial impressions, and from there into the more in-depth discussion. Okay, so what is Nostalgia about? Well, Nostalgia is about a Russian poet named Andrei, who is writing a book about a Russian composer named Sosnovsky, who committed suicide in the 1700s after returning home to Russia from Italy. Now Andrei is in Italy, in Tuscany, actually, tracing Sosnovsky's steps. He is traveling with his secretary or translator, interpreter, Eugenia, who is in love with him but can't seem to get to him. Get that through to him because he's too absorbed in his work and something else. This something else turns out to be the nostalgia that the movie's title alludes to. Andrei feels isolated from his past, his family, his native culture, his native home of Russia. While doing his research, Andrei comes across an old man named Domenico who kept his family trapped in their home for 7 years in apocalyptic anticipation. Andrei befriends Domenico, who tells him to carry out a ritual for him. Domenico wants Andrei to carry a candle from one side of a steaming bathing pool to the other without letting it go out. Andrei hesitates at first, but then agrees to do it. As they're preparing to leave Tuscany, however, Eugenia flies into a fit of rage and despair over Andrei's indifference to her. She decides to leave to be with someone else, even though the two of them were never really together in the first place. He's her boss, she's his secretary / interpreter, and he has a wife and 2 kids waiting for him at home. But maybe in pure Thomas Wolfe fashion, you can never come home again. And we'll get into that in a little bit later. But in the end, Domenico gives a speech to people in the city before dousing himself in gasoline and burning himself to death. Eugenia tries to start a new life with a man named Vittorio, but he turns out to be just as distant as Andrei was. The cycle of never being fully appreciated doesn't seem to end with her, at least from her perspective. Andrei manages to successfully carry out the ritual, but appears to die shortly thereafter. The last shot of the film is of Andrei at his home in Russia, but with the landscape being walled in by the ancient ruined walls of Tuscany, of where he was in Tuscany, suggesting that Andrei was never able to fully return to the person he was before he left his native country. Now, in death, he is forced to inhabit both worlds, both the old and the new, and exist within the total sum of his human experience. So, before we get into the questions, I'd like to give you guys a little bit of trivia, because there were a few fun facts that I found during my research that I thought would be kind of interesting to share with you, just the audience, just to give you a bit of background information, a little bit of context to help maybe everyone here better appreciate the movie. Because when I saw these, I thought they were interesting, so I figured, why not share a few of them with you guys. So first of all, to start, the film was actually originally supposed to be titled Voyage to Italy, but it couldn't be because there was already a movie called Journey to Italy, I believe 1954, starring none other than Ingrid Bergman, who's a famous Swedish actress. So eventually they'd settled for the title Nostalgia instead, and so that's why it's called Nostalgia and not Voyage to Italy, as Tarkovsky had initially planned or wanted. Another fun fact, this actor named Russian Soviet actor named Anatoly Solzhenitsyn was originally supposed to play the character of Andrei, but actually died of cancer in 1982, forcing Tarkovsky to cast Oleg Yankovsky instead, who had appeared in The Mirror, which is one of Tarkovsky's other movies. When asked about the use of dream sequences in the film, this film, Nostalgia, Tarkovsky responded by saying that we spend a third of our life asleep and thus dreaming. What is there that is more real than dreams? He was inspired in part by what he perceived as the profound form of nostalgia which he believed was unique to Russians when traveling abroad. He compared it to a kind of disease, saying that saying that it was an illness that drains away the strength of the soul, the capacity to work, the pleasure of living, but also a profound compassion that binds us not so much with our own privation or our longing, our separation, but rather with the suffering of others, a sort of passionate empathy. Tarkovsky hoped the film would capture the soul and memory of Italy. What struck out to Tarkovsky most during his visits to Italy during pre-production, when they were looking for shooting locations and the like, was actually the sky, the Italian sky, and how versatile it was, how many moods it could create, and how much it could inspire him in how many different ways, I suppose. Midway through production, Tarkovsky apparently realized that this film had more personal potential than anything else he had ever done up to that point. He realized that he could use it to reflect what he was feeling within himself. And so in a way, Nostalgia is meant to be a reflection of its director's interior and is therefore a semi-autobiographical work in nature. Some criticisms about the film now go as follows. Vincent Canby of the New York Times, for example, said that Tarkovsky may well be a film poet, but he's a film poet with a tiny vocabulary. Nothing happens in Nostalgia, that is. Dave Kerr said that the movie Nostalgia, the film is packed with imagery that seems at once hopelessly obscure and crushingly obvious, while also arguing that the work does succeed in inducing some kind of trance. Thomas Redwood wrote that critics on the whole have tended to ignore this film. Relatively little has been written about Nostalgia, and even less has been understood of it. From Rotten Tomatoes, we have the consensus that Nostalgia demands patience and rewards the investment with a hypnotic viewing experience that finds Tarkovsky in gratifyingly uncompromising form. Some quotes that I enjoyed, before we get into the questions, some quotes that I enjoyed from the film go as follows. I'll read some of them out for you all. This first one is from Andre. We don't know what madness is. The mad are troublesome, they're inconvenient. We refuse to understand them. They're alone, but they're certainly closer to the truth. This one's from Eugenia. I'd like to sleep for 10 days to wipe you out, but maybe there's nothing to wipe out because you don't exist. It's my problem. Another one from Andre. She's insane. I just thought that was funny. That was after they got into an argument at the hotel, and I thought that was a nice little line, so I figured I'd put it in with the rest. Another one from Andre. Feelings unspoken are unforgettable. Here's one from Domenico, the crazy old man who locked his family up for 7 years because he was afraid that the world was going to end. It is the so-called healthy who have brought the world to the verge of ruin. Here's another one from Domenico. Great things end, small things endure. And here's the last one. It's also from Domenico. It's from his speech at the top of the statue that he's giving in the city in Rome, I believe, during his little demonstration, trying to reach out to the people, trying to get them to see things from his perspective. Just look at nature, and you'll know that life is simple. We must go back to where we were, to the point where you took the wrong turn. We must go back to the main foundations of life without dirtying the water. What kind of world is this? If a madman tells you, you must be ashamed of yourselves. Right. So let's dive right into the discussion phase of this particular episode. So Simone, tell me this: what would you rate this movie out of 10, and why?
I rated a 9 out of 10.
Okay, and why?
I don't know. It just very set into tell into an unconventional way of telling a story, and then I really like this movie. I don't know why I rated a 9 of. It could be
Sorry,
a 10 out of 10, but for now I give it a
Could you speak up a little?
9 out of 10.
Can you speak up a little bit? I can't really I can't hear you as well as I normally do. Just speak up a little bit. Sorry. Can you sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you like that. Would you mind repeating all of that? Simone? Would you mind repeating
I
the
rated a 9 out of 10.
and then why?
Okay, I rated a 9 out of 10 because this movie really appeals to me. For example, the dreamlike, just what you said that it has a dreamlike aspects, or the viewing experience. For example, the patience that you will give into this movie will pay off as you finish it. It's a great experience for me. For example, the dream, not only the dreamlike aspect, but also the scripts are limited, but all the lines are very it leaves an impact to me. Uh, it's few, but it's the script writer really thinks about plan, or really make this movie good. For example, the and also the set, the it wasn't. I also read something about the colors regarding the movie, that it wasn't about the colors. It's about the emotions brought into the cinematography, and what really make this movie good is the cinematography. There's not much there, there's not much lines that, just like I said earlier, but the cinematography itself, and the each scenarios and dreamlike the flashbacks, it really talks to you what is really happening. And as the characters get their insight and introspection, you also get yours, just thinking about it, trying to string everything up. uh, it doesn't it play as the film plays, it also plays in your mind, where you're thinking that what could happen, or what is really happening, or a certain feeling that they're feeling, the heavy emotions that they having, you also get that emotion.
So you think it's an empathetic film because you feel what the characters are feeling as they're feeling it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, that's what I like about it. So there's a potential that I can rate it at 10 out of 10, but I don't know, for now I settled for a 9 out of 10.
Okay, so you
Yeah,
did
it
it.
is
You
the
did a nine out
feeling
of ten. Okay, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
the feeling you're that you're really included in the film is, it's just that there's not much conversations, or lines that have been delivered in the movie, but it's just that the directors, the movie itself, leave a room for you to think, or just it's up to you what your interpretation about the movie, or fill in the spaces that the movie has.
So you think the movie, because there isn't as much dialogue as there would be in, let's say, a more conventional film, you think that this movie's strength is in its ability to create a space for the viewer to reflect upon certain things. Maybe it's more of an intellectual or like mental space that this film creates and also occupies, but creates for the viewer, that allows them to better reflect on let's say themselves, or their lives, their world, the world in general, perspective, perception, these concepts, maybe the state of the world, where it's headed. It gives them that space to reflect, to use, to meditate, to ruminate, to muse. It's a tool that they can use for introspection. Would you agree with that sentiment, Simone?
Yeah, exactly. This what I want to say. Uh,
Okay, cool. Me personally, though, I would give this one a 7 out of 10, just because personally I don't like movies like this. This movie, it kind of reminds me of the French New Wave, if you've ever heard of that. It was a movement, of course, a cinematic movement that was going on in the '60s for the most part. I think Tarkovsky might have actually been one of the premier, like one of the leading sort of new wave people, even if he wasn't, because it was a French thing in the 1960s. That's where it started, of course, but it could have expanded outward. I don't know exactly what classification people try to put Tarkovsky in. I don't know what his labels are. I don't know what movements he's associated with as a director, as a filmmaker. But I will say this: it does seem to have some sort of influence. There does seem to be some sort of connection, however vague, however distant. I do see a certain sort of influence. And French New Wave, that would include films like, of course, Bonjour, or right, Bonjour Tristes, Hello Sadness. That's one of the kind of the top ones. I don't think you've seen it, Simone, but I have, and I like that one a lot. But those movies, anyway, those movies are usually about alienation, and this one is about alienation. You've seen The Pale Fire, though. You have seen that one. So maybe you could make some connections between Nostalgia and The Pale Fire eventually, if you like. But yeah, I mean, was it Pale Fire or was it The Fire Within? Sorry, it's The Fire Within. Yeah, that one's a pretty good one too. But anyway, all these movies, they're about what connects them all, what ties them all together, is the theme of alienation, right? The theme of these protagonists. They all have heroes. All their protagonists, all their main characters, they struggle to feel connected to their surroundings, and they need to. They all have this desire to kind of retreat into something else, something that isn't their immediate reality, I suppose. And so. Well, and I think it also connects to Mishima in a sense, but we'll get into that later. That'll be towards the end of our discussion. But yeah, in this one in particular, in Nostalgia, our protagonist Andre feels the need to retreat to some sort of purity, some sort of cultural purity. He wants to go back to Russian culture, and that this was apparently inspired in part by Andrei Tarkovsky. See, the protagonist has the same name. There is Andrei Gorbachev, who is the hero in this, and then there is the director, Andrei Tarkovsky. And Tarkovsky seems to have imbued this particular film with the feeling that he gets when he travels abroad as a Russian, apparently. So that's part of it. And so in that sense, it is a very personal work. However, the problem for me is that it's too slow. I don't like movies like this, these new wave kind of films, these very kind of... It's what people think of as serious European cinema, I suppose. That's kind of the general understanding of it. It's a bit, that stereotypical way of viewing it, these kinds of movies. And the problem with me is that there are way too many slow scenes and not nearly enough dialogue. I like movies, and this is all personal. This is all just my opinion. Whether this is good or bad, that's completely up to you, up to the viewer to decide for themselves. But like you said, I mean, these are movies they have to be taken. It's an eye of the beholder sort of affair. It's going to be different for everybody, no matter what. You might be able to come to a certain sort of vague consensus, but at the end of the day, these movies are meant to sort of live within you. And you take them for what they are, and you connect them to yourself above all else. And so I personally, I don't know, man. I like movies that have like really clever dialogue. I like movies that have, and when I say movies, I mean, like art films or serious films or whatever however you'd like to term this kind of movie, this class of cinema. I like ones that have a lot of wordplay, maybe. More like, I like more like Shakespeare. I like modernized Shakespeare, I suppose. This just doesn't fall into my taste range. This isn't my typical cup of tea. I wouldn't watch a movie like this if it weren't for the podcast. If we weren't discussing it right now, I wouldn't even bother with it. Because I don't like movies like this that have these long, drawn out, sequences, just these shots that go on for 9 minutes. Like the one at the end where he's carrying the candle from one side of the mineral pool to the other to carry out the ritual that Domenico wanted him to do. I just don't really like things like that. They just don't appeal to me. They don't resonate with me emotionally. They kind of bore me, And maybe I need to work on my patience. Maybe that's definitely part of it. Maybe this the fast pace of the ultra fast pace of the 21st century living. Maybe that's something that I need to kind of remove myself from a little bit. But so far, to divorce myself from, let's say. But I just, I don't know. I like movies that have, again, clever dialogue, clever character interactions. I like to know my characters too. I have a sense of who Andre is and who Tarkovsky is by cipher, I guess, by secondhand. But I don't know, man. I just don't really. I don't know. I don't really. I'm not really with it the way that I'm with other movies, like with Mishima. Like I really enjoyed that one. I would say I enjoyed this one. Like I don't hate it or anything, and I'm glad that I watched it. I do feel different coming out of it, but it's just not my personal. It's just personally not my favorite. Subjectively, my subjectivity gets in the way of me being able to kind of enjoy this as much as I think I would otherwise. It just isn't. Again, it's not my typical cup of tea. This isn't the thing that I would usually. This isn't the kind of thing that I would normally come to. That being said, there is a lot to talk about with it because it is a very rich work, and that cannot go without. We can't go without. We can't just how do people say that? Sorry, my mind's kind of blanking a little bit. It cannot be said. We cannot go without saying that this. It cannot go without saying that this movie is significant. It is a very well put together piece. It says everything that the director wants to say with it. It does its job, and some, and it makes you think, and it puts you into a certain sort of contemplative, introspective mood. But at the same time, that's just not my favorite kind of mood. Is there anything you want to add to that, Simone? You want to counter with your own perspective, your own take on this movie, this particular piece of cinema?
Yeah, just like I said, that's said in the reviews that the film it appeals into different people. It has that's what you said that it depends on the person who viewed this movie. Everyone has a different said or interpretation, or uh, it appeals differently to people. For example, for me, I guess that I like this because I watched this in the middle of of the night. Maybe just as the one thing that really affects me, the why it appeals to me. I don't have anything to do. There's not much distraction that present by the time, so I don't have a choice but to focus on the movie. So that's why I enjoy this one. Focusing on what's really going to happen. There's much conversation or dialogue, so that's why I pay much attention on what is really happening because I don't have a clue in the earlier parts of what is it all about. And I still, after I watched the movie, I still don't have much understanding about it. And after some research, I get fully understanding what it is all about. But yeah, I guess that my initial or as I'm watching the movie, it's just I having some in my own interpretations, but some of them didn't match the the actual meaning of the film of what is it all about. But it's okay. It's just the research really helped me to get through it to understand it. So yeah, that's what I read that some criticism that it says that it's a bit too long. It's really long. It takes a lot of time to make something happen for them to tell the story or something to really happen. And for example, the dialogue, it's just you said that it's so few, but some of it are meaningful. But maybe they rely on more on the cinematography to all the vacant time or the running time of the movie to build in the dialogue. But for some, it didn't. It wasn't enough for them to fully have the grasp of what's really happening in the movie, or it doesn't appeal to some. But yeah, it still depends on the person who view this one. But for me, it appeals to me because I don't know. It appeals to me. Uh, maybe because I exert some effort understanding it, or maybe it's just I don't know if I should use this again that it's new to me. So maybe yeah, I exert some effort on focus on what's really happening, and it's not the type that movie that I will watch also, because it's just the first movie that I watch with this transition this long. It's very long. It takes a lot of time for something to happen, but yeah, maybe yeah, it's not a typical movie that I will see. But I'm glad that I see this one, because as you said, there's a lot of things that we can talk about this, and appeals to me in the movie.
Right. Right. Yeah. Um. Well, you made a lot of good points there. So let me try to break some of them. Let me try to parse them a little bit. So yeah, for one, it is definitely the kind of movie that you should watch at night for sure. I would say that it does get you into a certain mood, and for that you need to have little to no distractions. It needs to just be you and the film. It needs to be you and the movie. It needs to be a very intimate viewing experience in order for you to get out of it what you need to get out of it. Let's say in order to get the most out of it. Let's say. For another, you did mention that there are a lot of these a lot of these extended wide cuts, and that's the thing. If you're big into cinematography and you love camera work or cinematography, let's just say cinematography as an art form, then this is probably it's probably porn. I'm sure this is like the cinematography, the cinematic equivalent of pornography for you if you're into that kind of thing. But I'm just personally, I'm not really into the technical aspects of movies. I like them when they enhance the story, but I am very much a narrative kind of person, because I come into these things from largely a literary lens, let's say. I like movies that are like, that are the cinematic equivalent of literature. That's what I like. I like a good movie novel, let's say, or a good adaptation of something from literature. That's what I look for in these things, and that's my bias. That's my personal perspective. That's my vantage point coming in. So I judge things based on that. I'm not a cameraman or anything. I dabble, but no, I'm not even going to pretend that I dabble in it or anything. I have really little to no interest in that sort of thing, that technical aspect of filmmaking. I can respect it, I can appreciate it to a certain degree, but it's not my passion. It's not what drives me. It's not what brings me into movies like this. I'm coming in here largely as a guest, largely as a student. I'm here to learn, and I through this film, I have learned a little more about, why I kind of get it a little more. I get why people like this kind of thing. I have a newfound respect for it, that I didn't have coming in. But at the same time, I'm not quite there yet, and I don't think I'll ever be, because there's only so much that a person can do or be or want or enjoy or whatever. That's what makes us. That's what makes the human race so beautiful, I suppose, is that we are so varied, we are so diverse, we're so different. And I don't want to overuse that's such an overused term these days, diverse, but it's true. We have range, we can have these differences. We can all be a little different from one another. We're individuals, and there's nothing wrong with that. But just for me personally, man, again, I keep saying this, but it's not my cup of tea. This isn't something that I would come to most of the time. But now that I have, I gotta say, I'm glad that I did, and I like the cinematography in here. I think it works beautifully for what the movie is trying to accomplish. I think it does get you into that state of mind, and I liked spending time with this one in particular. I did, and then also the third point you made, by the way, was about how you misinterpreted the movie before you did research. So did I, actually. It's funny that you mentioned that, because so did I. As I was watching, I thought that he was nostalgic for his childhood, okay? And so I thought that those scenes, the black and white scenes of the Russian, of his house back in rural Russia, in the countryside with his family, I thought that was his family growing up. I thought the child was him. I thought the woman that's his wife, I thought that was his mother, So that was a little weird for me when I found out that it was actually, that's his wife and those are his kids. That's not his mom and his siblings or anything. So I messed that up in my head until I looked it up and realized, oh shoot. Well, I figured it out as it was towards the end, as the movie explained it. So yeah, I didn't know that, and I think his wife's name is Maria. I thought that was his mom. and I thought that the kids were his siblings, and one of them might have been him, but no, those are his children. Uh, so yeah, how did you misinterpret it, Simone? I'm curious. What was your interpretation before you found out what I guess the proper, because that's not really an interpretation. It's just what I thought before I had all the facts. So what did you think before you had all the facts?
We, I didn't think that it was his family or anyone related to him. I thought it's just a simple daydream or uh, because there are some also parts, other dreams that appears in the movie that it seems like it's just a dream or something that represent his thoughts. I didn't thought that it was his family in the purpose. I guess it is some representation um, of something, the feeling of alienation or feeling of missing somebody. But it's not clear. It's not clearly portrayed in the movie that it was his family or anyone related to him because some parts they changes their appearances. Can't remember where, but they portrayed differently in the lens of the camera. And yeah, but I also found out that it was his family and getting along uh with some with some of the lines that Eugenia tells that she's always talking about she's always asking about um Andre's family in Russia or what's happened to them or is there any communication regarding them? So maybe that gives,
It gives
like you said, that it was revealed.
right, yeah, and I just I how about this? Did you like it more once you actually figured out like what was going on? So you thought that it was just more that those black and white scenes with his family. You thought that those were just more some sort of abstract, visual representation of what was going on in his head. I suppose in terms of his alienation, his longing, his desire for something incomprehensible. You thought that it was random, but when it was revealed to be his family and his actual home back in Russia, did that improve the movie for you? Did that enhance the experience, or did it do damage to it? How did it change the way you saw the film?
Uh, to be an it's quite could be a strength of the movie, but it's also the weakness of the movie itself. But for me, it seems like it's just a neutral experience. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that. But maybe for me, I can say that it's a good surprise for me that we got I gone through to some misunderstanding or get into some conclusion before I fully know the truth that it was his family that it's really that's the reason why he's feeling the alienation or something that is because he longs for his family. But in the other hand, it could be also a weakness of the story that for example just like you said that some people don't like some movies getting into uh, slow pace resolution of the story or happen or things that are happening in the story. It's just some parts there are some clues that it could be his family. For example, in the conversation, or for example, the times that they pop up or they get back into the screen time of the movie. That when he always feel alienated there or he feels like he's lonely. They always appear or where there's some things that trigger it. For example, the um Dominic Dominic Domenico when he talks about his family and then they show up into Andre's mind. But yeah, for me, I take it as a good revelation that that it was his family that we can say that we I come into some conclusion that it could be that he has done something wrong in the past or something, but in the end I found out that he just longs for his family. All of the things that he's experiencing that is because of the alienation that he feels or homesicknesses that he feels. But yeah, that he only longs for his family, but there are a lot of things that could also arise from that feeling that it wasn't. Some will say that it's just a simple thing, or I just realized that there are a lot of triggers that could possibly cause a person depression or some some episodes of alienation or loneliness. I don't know what's the right term to use. Sorry.
Maybe a good term to use would be, well, isolation, alienation, uh, segregation. Maybe you're segregated from your immediate surroundings. Um, yeah, yeah, I would agree with you though. It does make the movie a bit. It does make it better, yeah. And that's interesting. You did think that it was just a more abstract visual representation of what was going on in his head. That's a good way to, I like that. I do like that. That would have been interesting as well if it just turned out to be a bit more arbitrary and it's just, again, it's more abstract, it's more surreal. But yeah. How about this? Did you have any favorite scenes or moments, and why? Was there any particular scene or moment throughout the film that stood out to you in particular, and why? Why was that? Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I like the part when his hotel room was featured. It's just there's nothing really happening. It's just a change of colors, or not really the colors, the lightings, because it is in black and white. So yeah, I like it that the lighting. It's just a one side of the room, or a side where you can see all everything in the room. And it's just the lightings really gives you a feeling that he's lying on the bed or in a different or something that is he's thinking about things, or there's something really going on in his mind, and then it reflected in the room, or what is it's not actually him that it's not only him who feels that way or somehow uncertain with what's happening in the surrounding, but the place also tells what is really happening, and it gives you something to think about, or have some conclusion what he's thinking about or what is really happening back there. But I also like the scene where Domenico in the scene where all of the other people, I don't know if it's the I'm not sure if it's the asylum people from the asylum, or it's just some strangers on the street pictured in the stairway. I like the cinematography of that part.
Oh yeah, right. When he's giving his demonstration in Rome, and all the people are sitting on the marble steps, and they're all kind of by themselves. They're all kind of isolated from each other. There's like this distance between them, and that might be a visual representation, a visual metaphor for the distance between people. And yeah, I want to get into that in a second, in a bit, kind of how this movie kind of touches upon the themes of, let's say, perception, subjectivity, perspective, and individuality. So we'll get into that in a bit. That's good. It's good that you pointed that out. That's interesting. I was going to mention that in a second. Actually, it's one of my favorite scenes. But no, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, my favorite scene was probably the extended hotel arrival slash sleeping scene, where, because for me it kind of accomplishes the same thing, sort of thing that ambient music does for music, but for film. This is the cinematic equivalent of ambient music, I would say. Ambiance. Uh, by bringing the viewer into the world that the movie is trying to create, I think that Tarkovsky, especially here with the hotel scene, he allows us, the viewer, to occupy the same, or at least a similar headspace to the one that the protagonist Andre is currently in. While I was watching, I actually couldn't help but feel a little homesick, a little homesick and forlorn myself, despite being right here at home with both my parents about 10 to 15 steps away. Such is the power of powerful cinema, I guess. And I also, immediately before that, I like the part where he threw the book that he didn't like the translation of. I thought that was kind of funny, just how abrupt it was, because it cut from Eugenia walking down the hallway, going up to her room. It immediately it was very abrupt, the cut that it went just straight into him throwing the book that because that's another thing as well. Apparently, the untranslatability of art, which is interesting because, of course, we both watched this through a form of translation, right? Because the dialogue was all there wasn't very much of dialogue, mind you, but what little dialogue there was translated through, through into English, through English subtitles. And maybe that's the reason why he didn't put a lot of dialogue in it, because maybe he wanted to just have the work speak for itself. He wanted to make it more universal. He wanted to avoid tainting it by having it translated. So maybe by not having as much dialogue, maybe it made the film more pure in his eyes, from his perspective. It was purer because you can't really translate visuals and sound and all that. You can. I mean, I guess if you're watching it on like a crappy TV or like a screen or computer screen or something, then maybe that diminishes the effect a bit. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I watched it on YouTube. You watched it on YouTube. Maybe that is a form of translation itself, but maybe that's what he was trying to avoid, by not having as much dialogue anyway, from a dialogue perspective, I guess, from a linguistic perspective. He was avoiding tarnishing his work, taking away the potency of it, let's say, by having less dialogue. That could be one factor, one motivation, perhaps. But yeah, I also, just going through some significant scenes for me personally, I don't know if I'd call them favorites, but they stood out in particular among the rest. But another one that I liked was the little dream sequence with the two women, his wife Maria in black and white, coming together, kind of getting close to Eugenia. Those two worlds merging. I don't know, man. That kind of it was interesting. There was a bit of an erotic element to it that I particularly kind of enjoyed. The two of them, they don't do anything explicit or anything, but they're very close, and you can sense that closeness. And you can sense how that closeness is affecting Andre. It's the past catching up to the present, and I guess the temptations of both, and the temptation of merging the two, which is something that he doesn't seem to really want to do. He doesn't really want to blend past and present, He doesn't really want to do that for some reason. I don't know. He's kind of he's preoccupied with the purity of the past, I suppose. The purity of the native culture, the purity of Russia, let's say, as opposed to because as much as he likes Italy, he seems to miss just what he came from, his roots. He misses his origins above all else, So that seems to be a preoccupation that he's kind of living underneath, living with throughout the course of the film. So I thought that was interesting. That kind of that little dream sequence, that kind of it kind of summed it up for me a little bit, very very nicely, without words, without anything, just movement. I liked that. I also enjoyed and here's something that I thought was really interesting. There was a moment where he's kind of walking along the bridge, and there are the people in the mineral bath bathing. There's that woman with her dog, and and it's the woman that they met earlier. She has a dog, and she has like this fur coat, and she's kind of one of those typical like rich chicks, I guess, rich European ladies or whatever. And then the other people are in the bath too, and they're having conversations. It was interesting. I don't know. Let me try to see if I can pull up my note here. I thought I had it, but I lost it, I suppose. I don't know why that happened, but I did take a note. I did write it down. Oh, yeah. Okay, so here's my note for it. By the way, I liked it when Andre tells it was either he's telling the viewer or himself to but in any case he's narrating. Through his narration, he's telling someone to ignore the first conversation he overhears as he's walking by on the bridge. The bathers, he's walking past them. He says, "Ignore this conversation," and then he walks past another conversation and he says, "Pay attention to this conversation." So ignore the first, but pay attention to the second. But it's funny, it's interesting because then the movie actually does the reverse for us, the viewer, because we end up hearing the first one, but then the second one is muted. So I wonder what the significance might be in that. You know, the fact that he says to do things one way, but then the movie does it for us in the exact opposite way, in the exact reverse. You know, first conversation he says, Andre tells us, okay, just to try to make this as clear as possible, because I find it a little confusing myself, because it is supposed to be confusing. So first conversation, this is what he says. First conversation, ignore it. Second conversation, pay attention to it. But then the movie, what the movie ends up doing is it pays attention to the first conversation, but then it ignores the second conversation. So what is the significance in that? Why did it do that? Is Tarkovsky trying to say something about perception, perhaps? Is he trying to say something about human subjectivity and how we all kind of look at the world through a filter, and how we all sort of ourselves, we all kind of translate life. You know, we translate things through our individual perspectives. Subjectivity. You know, we're not purely scientific, objective creatures. You know, we can't look at the hard facts all the time. We imbue things, we color them, we paint them with our individual biases and desires. You know, just like him, how Andre is biased towards Russian culture as opposed to Italian culture, which he respects, but he just doesn't. It's kind of like how I respect this movie, but I can't get into it as much as I would like to because I'm biased against it, because my personal tastes don't necessarily align to it. Same goes with Andre. He likes, he respects, he appreciates, and this could be Andre the protagonist and Andre the director, but Andre the protagonist more specifically. He respects. He has a lot of admiration for Italian, the Italian culture, architecture, and all that. But just like, again, and this connects to the composer that he's apparently writing the biography for, that we don't really get into that a whole lot, but there was a letter that's of particular interest that Eugenia is reading in her head, but narrating to the viewer about how, for the viewer's benefit, about how Sosnovsky, who is the composer that Andre is writing the book for, he felt homesick. He felt this longing for Russia. He, too, enjoyed and appreciated Italian culture, but when all was said and done, his true love was for Russia. And the problem was that when he spent all that time away from Russia, it alienated him from it. You know, his eyes were open to a different way of living, I guess, a different culture. And that kind of messed him up. That kind of ruined whatever purity or ignorance he had prior to experiencing it. And it made him kill himself, and Andre seems to kind of be in that same mood. It's the exploration of the expatriation, exile, cultural exile, to be specific, national exile. So there, it touches upon such themes as those. And let's see. I'm just trying to say as much as I can before I give you the floor, Simone. I'm not trying to hog the airspace or anything, but I want to make sure that I say everything that I wanted to say with regard to this particular aspect of the movie. Also, there's a small moment when Andre tells Eugenia that she's prettier when she steps into the sunlight. That's when they're at the hotel still. That made me realize that because that was interesting to me. Then that made me wonder, because he said, he was like, you look prettier. He tells Eugenia, you look prettier when you're in the sun. The sunlight makes you prettier, and it does. The movie shows us that it does. And so that made me wonder, that made me ask myself, what if the movie is deliberately being filtered through Andre's perception, right? So moving beyond the black and white flashback scenes for a minute. The merging. What about this? What about the merging and blending of past and present? What if everything being presented in this movie is coded in a layer of Andre's subjective worldview? That would explain the interesting POVs / camera work in the bedroom and across the bridge. That would account for, again, the black and white flashback scenes. Going beyond those, and what I meant is that, going past just kind of the obvious perception there, which is, we are seeing that because it's important to him. It is also important to us. It is also important to the film. Going beyond the flashback scenes, what if everything is being filtered through some sort of perception, some sort of perspective, but mostly Andre's, and maybe meta-fictionally, meta-narratively through Andrei Tarkovsky's, the director's himself. What if that's what he's imbuing this film with? Because if you think about it, a lot of what the movie does technically, as in terms of its technical aspects, Andre seems to bring attention to that, or to have played a part in. The way he filters those two conversations he passes on the bridge is a perfect example of that phenomenon in action, I would say. Just like how, there's also that scene where there's like a dirt mound in the middle of Domenico's house. That dirt mound kind of makes a little miniature model of some sort of rural landscape. It kind of looks like there are country roads in there, and that's where I'm assuming Andre lives back home. That's the setting of his origins, right? His beginnings or whatever. Just his home. That's what he's familiar with. That's his reality. That's his native land, let's say. That's where his family is. That's where everything he really is the most important aspect of his personality, his nationality, and his cultural identity. That's where that is. And so he sees that in this mound of dirt. It might not actually be there objectively, but it's there for him, and therefore it's there for the film and for us, because we are looking at everything through his perspective, I think. Yeah. And I think, and I also think that the new wave aspect, if there is a new wave influence to this movie, I think that's where it helps. Some of the influence is here, because the character actions, the behaviors, the personalities, they're exaggerated and they're altered for emphasis. The stories are based in some form of reality, but are not necessarily grounded. They're not strictly realistic. Instead, they are deeply philosophical, metaphysical works that like to play around temporally and spatially. They like to play around with time and space, and use those as tools, means through which to make certain points about the nature of reality or the nature of perception. And that's what I think Tarkovsky does a very good job of doing here with this one, with Nostalgia. And you get a nice little touch there too. You get another visual metaphor with, how Andre has like a white patch in his hair. That seems to me to be some sort of visual metaphor for how he's marked by his past. So there are just little things like that peppered throughout the film that lend themselves to creating that mood, that contemplative sort of longing that I still feel as I'm talking about it, and I feel even more. Maybe it's because I'm hungry or something, but because I am kind of hungry. I got to eat as soon as we're done recording this. I'm kind of shaking. I haven't eaten much, but anyway, this movie does make you feel a certain way. It does make you feel this very deep longing, and it does put you in a certain state of mind, and it's almost a bit too much. It's almost unbearable, but quietly so. It's a sort of quiet suffering, and it's also a sort of good suffering. I would say it's the definition. It's the epitome of bittersweet. It's different from Mishima, the way Mishima made me feel, in the sense that it isn't as demented. It isn't as evil. There is no evil here. There is no twist or corruption of anything. There is no more so corruption than there is in anything else, just in general, I suppose. There's nothing particularly disturbing about this movie. But at the same time, there is. It disturbs you, but the disturbance is not evil. It is not something that you're necessarily afraid of or that you want to go away. It's just a bit overwhelming. It's just a bit overpowering. That's about as bad as it gets, but it's, at the same time, it feels very natural feels very organic. It feels right. It's kind of good to long for something. You want to long for something in life, because to long for something, if you're longing for something, it means that that thing is good, and that it meant something to you, and that it's significant, and that it's important to you. And we need to have things that matter to us, as human beings. We need to care about shit, and so, yeah. Another thing I wanted to touch upon real quick. I thought it was interesting how they cast an aesthetically appealing male and female lead, right? The actor playing Andre is, what many people would consider to be handsome, and the one playing, the actress playing, oh God, Eugenia is, again, what a lot of people would consider to be pretty or beautiful, pretty hot, pretty attractive. So I wonder why they did that, because to me they seem to be representatives of some sort of European aesthetic idealism. But why? Why take almost the sort of the Hollywood route on that one? Maybe not the Hollywood route. Maybe I'm getting, too. Maybe I'm being the egocentric American by trying to connect it to Hollywood. But still, it's like, why? If that's not the case, then why connect it to like the classic paintings and stuff, the Greco-Roman shit, the Italian frescoes and all that? Why make them so attractive? Why not have them be more organic, commonplace people, I'd say? Why do the poet and his interpreter have to stand taller than all of that? I don't know. I personally don't know. I think, but it might be Tarkovsky emphasizing the fact that even though things are ideal, even though you've got these attractive people, kind of you've got these beautiful people in this beautiful setting doing beautiful things, I'd say, and dealing with these beautiful ideas. There's still this sadness. There's still this emptiness. There's still this longing, this bittersweetness that's pervading everything. That is more important than any of the other stuff. So even though things are going pretty well, even though things are great, things are pretty much ideal, that's not enough. The bittersweetness at the end of the day dominates. It trumps all else. Maybe that's what he's trying to say through having that in the movie. And then one more thing I just wanted to add about Domenico. Domenico, I think his inclusion in the story, I would consider him to be a more extreme example of the power of subjectivity or individual perspective, because this is especially seen in the scenes where we see his house, the ruins of his house. It's derelict, it's decrepit, it's falling apart. He keeps bags over he has this sheet over his bed because there are all these holes in the roof, right? And there's rain coming through, and so he has this sheet that's like holding all the rainwater through. And then he has this door that, like, there aren't any walls around it, but there's still this door, and he still opens that door. He still goes through the doorway as opposed to going left or right, because there aren't any walls there. He could just go around it, but he still goes through it as if there are still walls there. There's a lot of that in those scenes at his house, And to me, what they say is that Domenico is the inhabitant of a world of his own subjective making, right? His own world plays to its own rules, to his rules, because he wants to see it a certain way. He wills it that way. His subjectivity trumps objectivity because he wants so badly to see things as they were, before his family left him. He wants to go back to that so badly that his subjectivity, the power of his subjectivity, trumps the power of objectivity, at least to a certain extent, right? And I think the perfect, really, another thing that kind of drives that point home is how there's like a banner in the background in one of the shots that says 1 + 1 = 1. Well, most people would say, no, 1 + 1 = 2. But that's not the point. The point is that Domenico wants to see wants it to be 1 + 1 = 2. He wants 1 + 1 to equal 2. He doesn't want it to equal, he wants 1 + 1 to equal 1. He doesn't want it to equal 2. He wants it to equal 1. Same goes for his world. He wants his world to be the way he wants it to be. He wants to imbue it with his subjectivity to make it a different way, a way that's different to how it really is. And so that's what his subjectivity is accomplishing. He wants to kind of preserve the sanctity, the purity of the state of things prior to his mental breakdown or religious fit, as they put it in the movie, or whatever it was that drove him to keep his family hostage, for 7 whole years. Now they're gone, but he still thinks they're there. He still wants them to be there. But then, of course, it starts to unravel when he calls out for Zoe, who is either his wife or his daughter. Probably his daughter, I'm assuming. Because later on in the movie, we see him following his daughter. That seems to be the member of his family who he kind of latches himself to the most. And anyway, through that character, I think, again, Tarkovsky is trying to demonstrate the power of subjectivity, the hold it has on us as human beings, right? Our individual worlds are, again, they're shaped by our personal biases and desires. And, if we want to, we can ignore the objective reality of a given situation and paint it out to be whatever we want. We can come up with our own narratives for things, right? We can spin things to suit our understandings of them, or we can do that. And here Tarkovsky appears to be insinuating, of course, that this is maybe not necessarily a bad thing, but a bittersweet thing. It is a failing of the human character, but at the same time, it is fundamentally human. It is, but at the same time, it is fundamentally human. At the same time, it is a fundamental aspect of the human character. Failing or not, it is still essential to who we are as people. And so that's why it's not really portrayed all that dark in the movie. It could be depressing, It could be sad, and it kind of is, but it's bittersweet. Again, it's bittersweet. There's a bittersweet longing attached to it. It could be just straight up depressing, but it's not. There's bittersweetness attached to it, and and then Andre's struggle with his own perception is beautiful in and of itself as well. Hauntingly beautiful, yes. It's haunting and it's bittersweet, but it's beautiful all the same, and sad, but in that mixed way. I think part of what this movie is about is the power of perception and its hold on us, and varying perspectives. Because Andre's secretary, or I wrote in my notes that she was his secretary, but she's an interpreter, I guess. Eugenia, she didn't like the way at the very beginning. To go back to the very beginning of the film, the opening scenes with the priest. She didn't like how the priest viewed womanhood. Andre. So these are different perspectives. So Eugenia doesn't like the priest's view of womanhood. Andre is haunted by the perspective he has on his childhood. Andre is intrigued by Domenico's unique, unconventional, somewhat pure, or at least more potent perspective on faith and salvation. Both Domenico and Andre are haunted by their pasts. They both seek a return to some sort of childlike state, perhaps some sort of ignorance, some sort of blissful ignorance. And I that's kind of how I feel about a lot of it. Both Andre and Domenico, they wade through water at various points because, and I see that as another visual metaphor for how they are both submerged within themselves, And then there's this important scene where Andre is telling a story in Russian as opposed to Italian. He's telling this story to some random girl who has kind of walked in, and I think that girl is actually supposed to be Domenico's daughter, but it can't be. Again, this is where the dreamlike aspect of the film comes into place, because his daughter would have been long gone by then. The wife would have taken all the kids and left, So I don't know if that actually. I have a feeling that isn't actually Domenico's daughter that Andre is speaking to during the scene when he's in the submerged kind of ruins of that building, whatever that is. He's and the water's the water level's really high and the statues are beneath the surface, and he's just sitting there burning the book and telling this story to this girl, but he's telling it in Russian instead of Italian. And I was wondering why that is, and I think, again, it really it brings home that point that he's trying to return to the native land, to the native culture. Andre wants to retreat within himself. He seeks full immersion. That's what he's looking for. Some form of metaphysical escape. And to me, it's like a nicer, more personal, more bittersweet version of what Torless wanted in this novel called The Confusions of Young Torless, written by Robert Musil, who is famous for writing, of course, The Man Without Qualities, which explores similar metaphysical themes. Only here in Nostalgia, instead of lust, let's say, for the realm of the metaphysical unknown, Andre, he simply wants to make his contemplative state the norm, I think. He seeks contemplation in the new plane, whatever or wherever that may be. And he doesn't mind burning away the material in order to get there. Hence why he allows the book of translated poetry, which he didn't like because he doesn't believe in translation, he allows that to go up in smoke and flames. To make another comparison to another film, like Mishima, like Mishima in the film Mishima, 1985, Mishima, A Life in Four Chapters, which was a work, not produced by, it was produced by Coppola, Francis Ford Coppola and George Lucas. Like Mishima in that film, Andre in this one seeks purity. He seeks a form of purity. But whereas Mishima sought purity in aesthetics, Andre appears to seek it in culture, Russian culture, his native culture. Another thing I wanted to add to the sounds, the background noises in this movie, they're always on the periphery. We never get to see the actual sources of the sounds, only their memory or their influence, their impact, their haunting presence. Andre and Domenico are always they're always trapped in the centers of burned out, ruined landscapes. And even the countryside where Andre's family embodies a certain tinge of desolation, at least to me. And yeah, before I say any more, Simone, is there anything you want to comment on? You want to add anything to anything that I've just said? I know that I said a lot, and I'm sorry for going on for so long, but I want you to counter some of this stuff or give your own perspective on these things. Go ahead, whenever you're ready.
In review about there are a lot of things that you already talk about and you already clear or uh, I don't know how can I refine my thoughts regarding this matter. But what I like about this movie is the portrayal of longing or feeling of alienation. I mean, just like you said earlier that you watch this movie um, in your home. It's just with your family, I guess. But yeah, but still, this movie made you feel that the feeling of alienation or something. Just like this same to me that I get a better understanding of why am I feeling this kind of alienation even though I'm at home or something or hanging out with my friends or yeah, it's just I think that the feeling of longing for something is just a normal human traits, I guess that because you can't long for something that didn't hold dear to you, even though it's bad or good. It still holds something for you. I guess that there's something in it uh, that you long for. I mean, that's your longing. There's something that you miss about it that you made you feel something better or make you feel whole or something because when you feel alienated it seems like that you wasn't complete that there's still some emptiness inside that your mind or body that you're feeling and then yeah it I have more understanding about longing that yeah that it wasn't weird it's just it's weird in the sense that when you feel alienated it's really feel different but it's part of man we are human being and that's what makes us unique and that's also what makes us beautiful as a human being because when we long for something or we feel different it make us contemplate of the things that we need to think about it helps us refine our thoughts or come up with a new idea or something that you say we wanted to understand things and that's what I like about human beings that there are a lot of things that even though we didn't understand we always seek meaning for things for example just that that's the reason why some stories are created mythologies and whatnot that's the reason why because human beings are always seeking for meaning of something because of this feeling of longing or there are a lot of things that affected it but yeah, that's what I like about this movie. It's just I got another better understanding about what is longing all about, or the feeling of alienation is all about. Um, uh, One part I agree with you. It's that with Eugenia before the scene that I mentioned about the hotel room. I guess that the introspection about that room. I don't know if just before or after that scene. That Eugenia and another woman. And it's just a that's just to say that there's an erotic feeling going on with between them. That yes, there really is. But yeah, yeah, I agree with you that it's just a you're trying to the past or the present and the past. It's just a merge or something that a borderline that it's just a merging idea uh, of Andre because I agree with you that with it seems that the movie is portrayed in the eyes of Andre that everything is happening even though it's just an introspection of honest introspection of Domenico or uh, Eugenia, it's still portrayed in somewhat Andre's perspective. As to say that when his lines or the way he acts, it's just it controls the whole mood or the direction of the movie itself. That resemble the book work and yeah, Domenico, he I remember I like his line. I guess that thanks uh, for elaborating that part about the posters or in his house is 1 plus 1 is equals to 1 and that's one of his lines that explain that thing and I understand it better when you uh, emphasize that thing. Let me read the line. 1 drop plus 1 drop makes a larger drop, not two. And uh, philosophically speaking, he got a point, but yeah, but it's just a subjective to be that way or to view things that way. That's the way he see things. But yeah, it's just it give us an understanding of who Domenico is or what his beliefs are or why he what's the reason why he's acting that way or the reason why he lacks his family for 7 years or the reason why he's longing for because it's portrayed in a subjective manner and also what I think about his dorm I read about some trivia before about ships that even though that the farm doesn't have fences if just it's only a gate the ship won't cross the border line that the gate suggests they only will get out of the gate no matter what there's not even a fence so maybe I can connect that to Domenico I guess that he's lacking his own word his own house that even though it's really in a good condition to live in it that's what it just represents his past that is being lack in his past that he can get away from it that there's something really holding him back uh, regarding his past that he can't move on and also Andre the part where yeah yeah about the book that he doesn't believe in the translation yeah that it's also one good part of the movie that yeah the it was portrayed different it just refined what is it all about that why it could be the reason why it's also portrayed in that way that there are less there are less lines that maybe just agree with you that yeah he could be portrayed that he doesn't want to ruin everything by translating it in English but even though we we seen it in the translated way uh, especially the English translation, and also the source where we find this material, which is in the YouTube. Yeah, to sum it all everything up, I guess that uh, this is not only about the feeling of alienation, but also the underlying context of what this certain feeling brought to us. That it could be a negative, but also there's also something um, that it could also bring something good to us. And just as you said, it's a bittersweet one, and also the character selection. It was viewed that all of the main characters are portrayed in are good looking, or yeah, it's I guess that they really did a good job in the part that they're not only focused on uh, they really think about what the under all of the aspect that could affect the movie itself, and then there's also good reasons for it that we can find in the movie. So yeah, that's what I like about it.
Yeah, I like what you said about sheep. You know, they have nothing holding them back. It's just a gate. Reminds me of how circus elephants are trained to uh, follow their handlers, even though they don't have leashes on them. So I think in some and I think in like some parts of India and stuff too, they like elephant trainers or whatever. They train the elephants to always follow their lead and everything, and so they basically have invisible leads on them, invisible kind of leashes, but they're not really there. You know, they're not real. They've trained the elephants to think that they're there, and so for the elephants they're real, but objectively they're not. There's nothing there, but to them, those elephants, it is an objective. Well, it's a subjective reality. So yeah, I like what you said about that. That's interesting. Yeah, definitely. And hmm, I wonder where I should go from here because there's still a fair amount of ground to cover. But I guess just hmm. How about this? Let's shift gears a little bit. Uh, so during the scene where they come back to the hotel room, this is Andre and Eugenia. Why do you think Eugenia gets so mad at him? Uh, and why do you think she decides to leave? And how does that scene make you feel when she's like yelling at him and just getting into this huge this big emotional flurry? I suppose. How does that scene make you feel? And what do you think the significance behind it is? Why is it included in the movie? Because that's one of the scenes that has the most dialogue. It has the most, I guess, narrative and emotional action. So why is it there? What does it accomplish?
Uh, for me, it gives an understanding why why Eugenia is acting that way, or what's the reason behind why she's been why she got offended by by Andre, but by deciding that not to sleep with her. Because just like you say, there are parts that he praises Eugenia, but it seems that Eugenia Garen really like the way that he praises her. Maybe she got in love or infatuated in that sense, but it seems like Andre mean it in some ways, but he didn't have much. It doesn't have commitment on what he said. I guess that Eugenia really get caught into that line that she get in love, or it really appeals to her, and she thought that Andre likes her. It could be that he likes her, but he's caught into his past. He's lack into his past, so maybe that's the reason why he doesn't want to go further in a relationship with Virginia, even though it could be that he wanted to be that way, but he's more focused on his past. But this scenario, for me, I guess it settles everything that Eugenia being a woman that about her why that she really feel that Andre neglected or didn't want to consider. So it's just a it shows up the real character of Eugenia, or what is it all about, that why the totality of her character being portrayed as a woman, or easily get affected by the emotions past, that when our emotion manifests over us, that it could let us to do something else, that that an initial reaction or impulses.
Right, right, yeah, exactly. You know, that's all true, and but it's funny because while I was watching it, I hated this scene. It was like I'm not gonna lie, I almost turned the movie off watching it for the first time because it annoyed me. You know, it just irritated me, and it kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. Now that I've seen the whole movie and I've been able to place it within the context of the overall narrative and whatnot, and now that I kind of get the movie a little more, it doesn't bug me at all. It makes sense why it's there, but I want to share with you and the audience just the notes that I took because I thought they're kind of funny. I summed this up while I was watching it. I summed it up as Eugenia pops a tit because she's mad at Andre for not fucking her. That's basically what the scene is too. If you think about it, that's really all that happens, and it kind of got me on this whole train of thought. It's like I don't get why. This is something that it's just a personal nitpick, take it for what it is, but it's like, I don't understand why these serious European films always have to have scornful women in them. You know what I mean? Men and women fighting. Attractive women throwing hissy fits and mocking the man and his intellectual and artistic ambitions, deflating the whole institution of intellectualism with one great outburst of emotion. Why is Eugenia even complaining about anything? Isn't Andre her boss? Like, you don't talk to your boss like he's your absentee boyfriend or something. You know what I mean? She literally gets paid to follow him around Europe. Her job seems like a luxury to me. Where's the professionalism in any of this? Where's that proper chain of command that you have? Maybe not necessarily in the military, but in general, where is that I guess that necessary hierarchy? She gets paid to go on vacation and to translate, between languages. That's all she has to do. She just has to follow this guy around, look at all these beautiful buildings and basically have this great time and get paid for it. She makes money doing that. Like, what the hell is she complaining about? Uh, and for another thing, if that wasn't bad enough on its own, on top of that, he's married. She wants to fuck her boss, but her boss is married and has 2 kids. Why should he give a fuck about her? I don't understand that. The people who make these movies, to me, these directors, man, these deep, like, intellectual directors or whatever. One problem I have with them is that they all seem to have such a cringeworthy aversion to, quote unquote, like, Christian morality or bourgeois beliefs or, conventional living. I guess conservative living, because maybe they were raised under, maybe their parents didn't let them do whatever they want. Maybe their parents were too strict on them as kids, and so now they've grown up and they've got all these weird biases against that kind of morality, that kind of perspective. These directors, man, they always have to stick a character like Eugenia in their movies to humiliate their protagonist ciphers. Their protagonist, who's the main character, who's usually like a stand-in for themselves. And at this point, man, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of think it's a fetish at this point. You got Ingmar Bergman, Andrei Tarkovsky, Krzysztof Kieslowski. I think all of these people, all of these directors, I think they all have this weird fantasy of being ridiculed and humiliated by attractive women. I think it's their kink, it's their fetish. They love to just they love to just shove it into everything that they do. To me, it's like they have such, like, massive egos that they literally they jerk themselves off, right? Thinking about these women getting huffy over not being able to sleep with them, or of a woman getting jealous of how much time they spend pursuing their craft. You know what I mean? They want these women to compete and vie with art for their attention, right? Art is their great amorous sexual rival. When it comes to this whole situation, it's like these artists, they want to have this love triangle. It's the artist, it's it's them, the artist, it's art itself, and then it's this some attractive, beautiful woman or whatever. All of them kind of, it's this perfect love triangle that they can never seem to get enough of it, and they always shove it in everything they do, man. It's so narcissistic to me and just annoying, man. I don't know. It's something that pisses me off. It's so I wouldn't say it's pretentious, but it's definitely very self-absorbed. It's very navel-gazy, It's very egocentric, very narcissistic, I would say. All these directors, man, they want to be the type of bona fide artiste who's so absorbed in his work that he forgets that there's a beautiful woman standing by to fuck him at all times, That's what they want. God, it's so fucking annoying, man. I don't know. I don't know if you saw that, but it bugs the fuck out of me because there's always a scene like that in movies like this. There really is. The male artist protagonist being humiliated by a beautiful, scornful woman, And at that point, it's like either turn the movie into full-blown erotica or move the fuck on so we can get to the actual points and the actual ideas and the insights that these movies are playing around with, The only consolation that I saw in this film is that at least, at the very least, Andre is a bit of a fucking pimp about it. He's a bit of a pimp. He handles the situation with tact and grace, and then literally proceeds to smack Eugenia in the ass so hard, well, no, not so hard, but as hard as he can in the middle of the hotel hallway for all to see. I thought that was fucking funny. I don't know. I laughed out loud when I saw that. I thought that was great. It's so bizarre, though. It's so weird, man. Like, fuck, these directors gotta they really need to stop doing that shit. Oh, God, it's so easy to make fun of. And then most people will probably, like, people who don't understand, people who don't watch these movies all the way through or whatever, they assume that that's all it is. That it's just a bunch of, it's a bunch of attractive Europeans getting into fights, basically. That's what they think this stuff comes down to. And it's just, it's so generic. It's so stereotypical, man. I'm so sick of seeing it in movies. I don't know. It's like such a trope. Artistic movies like this, they shouldn't have tropes. They should be unique. But they all have this like narcissistic thing. It's just they can't help themselves. These directors, they love to put this shit in. They always find a way to squeeze it in. I just don't get why. Like, fuck, man, stop. But I don't know. Well, and then it's also interesting that the guy's nose starts bleeding after he smacks Eugenia in the ass. I was wondering, is that supposed to be like the serious European equivalent of one of those like anime nosebleeds? Like in anime, like when the guy, or manga, like when the dude sees like some chick like take her clothes off or something, and then like blood starts spurting out his nose or some shit. Is that what that's supposed to be for this? I don't know. What do you think about that whole thing, Simone? What do you think about my take on it?
Yeah, I really get annoyed about why Eugenia act that way. I guess, yeah, I like her because she's beautiful in the first, but I don't know why the scenes lead up to this part that she becomes really annoying. That why she really wanted to get Andre humiliated about the things that, yeah, it's annoying. But then after these things, for example, that it ends up Andre smacking in the back in his butt. Eugenia, it just makes it's all lovable. I also laughed in the part that it's a good way to balance the mood because it's really annoying that she really wanted to. There's no such reason for her to do that because knowing that Andre is his boss, and yeah, that his boss, that she should be as a translator, that it is a decent job, so maybe she should be professional regarding his work, her work, and yeah, I don't know, maybe I agree with you the part that uh after Andre sparking his butt, her butt, his nosebleed, maybe. Yeah, we can relate it to some anime stuff that happened when uh when some characters peep or see some fetish stuff or something. I don't know. It's just I just thought that it also exists in that way. I thought it's just a fantasy that when you see some sort of the thing, your nose will bleed or something.
Yeah, it was a weird connection. It was very random, but I don't know. It's interesting. I guess I don't know. It has something to do with the erotic, I suppose. But yeah, yeah, that's probably yeah, it's fucking annoying. I don't know why they it was, but it's kind of funny. I don't know. It was in a way, it's a in a weird sort of way, it is a highlight of the film. I think for whatever reason, but yeah, I wish directors like that wouldn't do shit like that. It's just annoying. Stupid cow. You know, shut the fuck up, Eugenia. You know, shut up. Like you're just you're annoying. Stop. You know. But God, we still have a little more ground to cover. I hope you're doing good on time. We might go for another half hour or so. So if you need to drop out, that's all right. But I will continue with the questions. There are still a fair amount to get to. So what about this? Let's see. What should I go from here? Where should I go from here? How about this? Why did Domenico kill himself? Do you think? Why did he need to like set himself on fire and die? And does that connect to the scene in in the scene in Waking Life? You know, where by Richard Linklater, directed by Richard Linklater, where that one guy burns himself to death. Why do you think Domenico killed himself? And does that connect to that scene in Waking Life for you?
Uh, I remember that. I remember that scene. Uh, that man who burned himself in Waking Life also have the same ideals with Domenico. Same ideas that the world is needs something to be changed. That if it not if people did not care about it, that the world would end or something. It could lead to some sort of the world ending, the end of the world, or some chaos may evoke to may rise because of that certain scenario. That maybe I guess that Domenico is hopeless. I guess that he already told what he wanted to say, or he wanted to to let people know he already has the audience. I guess it's first time for Domenico to have such large audience uh I don't know if they listen to him, or maybe just he feels like that his people attended
His demonstration. Uh, Shit.
they already did their job, what they need to do. They already expressed what they wanted to express. It's just they already leave a message to the.
Oh, god damn it. Fuck. 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 No. God damn it. Fuck. Ah, come on. Oh, come on. Oh, God. Are you serious? Okay, well, I guess that's not working anymore. Hey, Simone, if you can hear me, your connection jittered out. I can't hear you. I can't hear anything you're saying. The network connection's bad again, so yeah, I couldn't hear anything you said. I couldn't hear anything you said past you started to talk about how the people were watching him, but now I can't hear you. So I'm just gonna, if it's all right with you, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna talk, and then if it works again, then you can finish what you were gonna say. But I thought it was interesting how the people didn't seem to care. They all seemed to be part of like his crew or whatever. Like they were all crazy too. So um, maybe they were all in it. You know, maybe they're all just too crazy to really comprehend, what the significance of what he just did of dying. No one stopped him, by the way. It seemed to me like the dog and Eugenio were the only ones who even gave a shit when he killed himself, and well, for me, for me, that scene, that whole aspect of the movie, to me, it seems that like nostalgia is the movie anticipates modernization through secularization. Okay, so what it's capturing, what it's documenting, is how the religions and belief systems of the 20th century no longer had the grip on people that they used to. More and more every day, it seems that people are losing their faith in things. The masses have nothing to believe in, which is why we've become so political today. Politics is for us, it seems, the new religion, the new belief system the new system of organized belief, the new thing which people can give themselves away to, and I think the reason why Domenico's ritual that he wants Andre to do, the ritual of jumping into the mineral pool with a candle, the reason why that's so bizarre is because Tarkovsky, why it's that and not just something more normal, I guess, like going to church and praying, for instance. I think the reason why it's so strange and unconventional and somewhat insane, is because Tarkovsky is using that as a way to emphasize the way people look upon spirituality and devotion in these modern times, right? I think for a lot of people, especially, I think these days, I think it's strange to believe in something too much, I think it's always been like that, but especially today. People will mock and shun you, sort of, if you believe in something a bit too strongly, They'll call you crazy, they'll call you insane, they'll ostracize you. And maybe that's because they're jealous of your conviction, of the strength of your convictions, of your dedication to something greater than yourself, or maybe it's because they just simply don't understand what it's like to believe in something so much that you're willing to literally kill yourself for it, to give your life to it. Just like with Yukio Mishima, in Mishima, Life in 4 Chapters. Domenico here, too, is trying to reach out to the masses. Both of them are giving demonstrations. Both of them are trying to get others, to see things from their perspectives. And both of them sort of fail. Only through art is the message fully received. Only through the movies is that message really carried out. And that's in a meta-narrative, kind of metafictional way. So it's like within the context of their actual, the movie's inner universes or whatever, for both of those, it's like the message doesn't seem to have gone through. Not fully anyway, not as effectively as it perhaps could have. And yeah, and whereas it seems that Mishima, his sacrifice it made him complete because he wanted to die his entire life. He wanted to die for something greater than himself. It seems like with here, Domenico, it's interesting because at first, when he's on fire and kind of scrambling around on the floor dying, on the ground dying, Ode to Joy, Beethoven's Ode to Joy plays. And you think for a moment, it's like, hey, maybe that signifies that Domenico is finally free. But then wait, nope, that's not the case. No, it's not. Because then it stops. It kind of, the music warps and then it fades and then that's it. And then it's just him, it's replaced by him screaming. So to me, I see that as Tarkovsky trying to demonstrate that the ecstasy of self-sacrifice doesn't last very long. That in the end, it doesn't seem as if his death, his sacrifice was worth it because nobody really listened. And the dog was the only one who really cared and gave a shit. And now that Domenico's dead, he's without an owner. He's alone. So maybe his sacrifice was all for nothing. Things are worse now than they were before he took action and decided to end his life. But then again, it goes from that scene to the scene where Andre is trying to complete the ritual that Domenico tasked him with. And you wonder, as a viewer, you're like, is Andre Domenico's only hope? Is he actually going to carry this out? Is he going to succeed? Well, Andre is Domenico's only hope, but is he going to honor his legacy and do a good job of carrying out what he asked him to? And it's interesting because when Andre goes to do it, the mineral water from the pools, it's been drained. And I see that as a visual, again, another visual representation of how faith has drained from the cultural consciousness in most parts of the world these days. It signifies kind of the dried up, how faith and devotion and all that spirituality have dried up in the modern era. And we see Andre trying to keep the flame burning. The first time he tries to make it across the pool, it goes out, and so he has to go back to the other side and start over again. And on the second attempt, he succeeds. He manages to bring the candle all the way from one side of the pool to the other, keeping it lit. And when he does that, he collapses, and we assume that he's dead. That the effort it took him, the exertion he went through in order to complete the ritual successfully, proved to be the end of him in the end. But he still did it. So I don't know. Maybe that's more bittersweetness. He managed to honor Domenico by doing what he had entrusted him to do, but at the same time, now he too is dead, and so now hope it's still absent. The world is still faithless because Andre's gone now too. But at the same time, that might be good because now maybe Andre is complete in a sense, and you see that in the ending. Right, the very last shots where Andre is finally back home. He is back in the black and white rural Russian landscape, and he's with his family, and he's with the dog again. He and the German Shepherd are reunited, but then it zooms out, and you see that landscape is actually surrounded. It's walled in by the ruins. By Italian ruins, right? And so, to me, that seems to signify a perfect blending, a consummation of past and present. That's the union. That's where everything comes together. He was missing the earlier part of his life, but now that he's gone, he's successfully managed to connect the later part with the earlier part and make peace with that, and just kind of enjoy his life in total, in the total summation of his experiences and whatnot. So now he can put those two things together. He can merge Russian and Italian culture and experience, and it all becomes one at the end. It's all one entity, and that entity is perhaps greater than the sum of its parts, but it's also still to the bitter end. It is still to the very end, to the bitter end, appropriately enough, to the very end, it is bittersweet. That never goes away. That bittersweetness never leaves. And maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it's necessary. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's, it is what it is. I don't know. What do you think about any of that, Simone? If you're available to talk now, if the network thing fixed itself, if you can answer, what do you think about any or all of that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah.
Good.
Go. We can connect it. We can connect it to what is happening. Everything that happened in the movie, for example, the deeper analysis about Domenico, or what he wanted to, what his belief are, or what he really wanted to do. Let me answer the previous question that you answered before the connection get lost.
Sure.
Same with the guy in the Waking Life. I guess that they view the word differently. That it seems that they didn't see hope anymore to the people, but they just wanted to tell the people what their beliefs are, or what are the things that they wanted to tell or to remind them. And this is just that for them, it's just their part. It's just their part that they just wanted to tell what they really wanted to people, that something that to change their mind or to think about things. But it seems like that their sacrifice are just gone in vain, because there's no one really listen to them. That it's just gone in vain. That it's pointless. That their sacrifice are pointless, because it doesn't really leaves an impact to the people that they wanted to talk to. Uh, so we can relate this what happened in, I don't know. always agree with your ideas that agree with you that regarding the about the fate of the world, or the some part of the world, that religion is it mm, wasn't that emphasized as before, that it wasn't given much important than it used to before, or it's just a being left out, or people didn't give much importance to it, that even though that there are a lot uh, of, of good points regarding this. For example, we can relate this to Domenico's speech, that even though it's we can say that it's subjective, there's still something we can learn from it, that we just need to lend an ear.
Right.
And also what happened uh to the mineral pool, it's just yeah, it's also good a good visual representation of what really happened on Dominico, or what his plan have what his speech leaves impact to, or uh what really the other part of the movie, or the ending part, I guess, that we can connect it to that emphasizes Dominico's character, but also it also brought an end to Andre, that he collapses after doing the ritual, and we can assume that he's dead, for what happened.
Right. Is that Yeah, yeah, exactly. Let me just let's see here. So you think it killed him though? You think he died?
Yeah, yeah, I think he died because he get transported, or he get into this place, his house, and then surrounded by Italian architectural walls, or but it just he's been bounded, or he's been locked into that place,
Okay. Interesting.
or
Interesting.
maybe it's just that reality and his dreams, a dream world merges.
Right. Yeah. And I would agree with that sentiment as well. It does. It's that perfect merging. It's that perfect blending, or maybe not perfect, but bittersweet. Again, emphasis on bittersweetness, and yeah, I don't know if it's something that anyone can ever really understand. Maybe that's the point. Maybe Tarkovsky's trying to say that it will always elude us the true nature, the full nature. We can only understand so much as human beings because we are bogged down by things like subjectivity and individual perception and all that. So, how could we ever hope to possibly understand things in full? That might be part of what he's trying to say in that. Now, what I want to ask you, this is interesting because in the very last scene, it does start to snow. So what I'm curious about is, do you think that's snow or do you think that's ash? Because I think it's ash personally. I think that would be more interesting, honestly, if it turned out that what's falling what looks like snow is actually ash, and that what that signifies is that again he has sort of let go of the material. He's not held back by it anymore. He can fully immerse himself in this whatever this metaphysical plane that he was seeking the entire time. What do you think about that? Do you think it's snow or do you think it's ash in that very last scene? What are your thoughts?
Given that it was a dream world, we can say that it was an ash. Uh, it's more likely easier to explain if we're connected as an ash, or we can say that it's connected to what happened to. It's also not only what happened to him, but also connected to what happened to Domenico, or the ideas that he wanted to tell are also gone in vain, or something. And also what happened to to him himself, Andre himself, that he's no longer connected to the things that separates him from the places that he longed, because in the end he get back to his home, even though that it seems that he's been locked into that place, that the reality and his dreams merges, but it seems that that's what he's looking for. It's just that he's no longer connected to the things that will distract him, that will cause him to long for the things that he's longing for, or he's back to the place to where he belongs.
Right, yeah, he's home in a sense. A home, whether that's physically or metaphysically. Um, exactly. So, you know what? I think we actually kind of said everything there was to say. Except, well, now to go back to the very beginning of the movie, because I didn't ask this earlier, and that's my fault for mixing things up. But so at the very beginning of the movie, in the opening scenes, there is a part where doves fly out of the statue of Mary. You know, Mary, Holy Mary, Mother of God, and all that. What do you think that signified when the doves flew out of the statue? Was that just a nice bit of imagery for the audience, or was there a deeper underlying meaning to that? What do you think?
Uh, I don't know, but people relate dub as a form of freedom. We can say that we can see that form of freedom that we can say that we can see that, for example, that it comes up from a religious statue, that freedom for faith or are renewed as an individual. We can say that the thing is possible, but that scene is also connected to Eugenia's conversation with the priest, that she didn't like the way the priest sees woman, that a woman should bear a child and have the patience uh, to uh, to help the child grow. It just maybe it's related to human. I don't know if I'm thinking too much, but it's related to uh, human reproduction or something. That it's not exactly human reproduction, but it's just some sort of how human beings evolve as an individual, or the freedom. When we reach our stage or freedom, we get into exposed to different materials, or maybe yeah, we have, once we gain our freedom, we have been changed as an individual or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, maybe relate back to Shakespeare and As You Like It. You know, it's like we have moved beyond the primitive state of nature or whatever, and through civilization, through the court. We and the court is in the royal court back in the day, because that was what civilization was back in Shakespeare's time, was the royals and the royal court. Again, that's how you become civilized, through education, through courtly manners and all that. Well, here it's like through civilization we have advanced beyond basic survival, hunter-gatherer type shit, prehistoric, primal, whatever. It's not completely gone, but we've moved far enough away from it to the point where it's like, yeah, now maybe that priest's perspective on his view on motherhood and femininity and women, that might be a bit outdated now, because we live in a time where it's like, I don't know, people can be whoever they want really at this point, right? And people have the freedom to choose to do whatever. You don't have to be a mother if you're a woman. You don't have to get married and have kids. I mean, it's still encouraged by many cultures, of course, and it's not, people aren't free everywhere. I mean, you have parts of Africa and Asia, and, well, you have religious families who, in North America, in the so-called free parts of the world, where, there are people, it depends on who you are and where you come from and all that. But yeah, it's like we still deal with that today. I mean, it's generally free, but no, people still have to put up with that stuff all the time, and it's bad. But you know, again, there's a fundamental universal aspect, truth that rings through it, regardless, right? Women, they have maternal instincts. Men, they have paternal instincts. Um, Women are feminine, men are masculine. It's just the way it is. It's part of our nature. It's who we are as organic carbon-based life forms, I suppose. And it's interesting. It is, but I do think the priest is wrong, obviously. But it's an interesting perspective to explore, and it's well, and it makes sense why he's that way because he's a rural priest. He's rural Italy, Tuscany. Of course, he's going to think that way. I mean, what do you expect? What else do you expect? You know. Um, but yeah, I do think he's onto something though about how women are more devout than men because they were designed by God, let's say, to be creatures who take on self-sacrifice as part of their nature. Men don't have to do that, so they're not as willing to sacrifice themselves because they're not as used to it. But women, because they have to be mothers, because they have to be wives and all that, they're maybe not necessarily maybe they're not necessarily made to be that way, but they're just on the whole they're probably more used to it, and so they have more of a tolerance for it, and that can be a good thing. You can use that for good. You can use that to be independent. You can use that to be free. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's part of the point that the priest was trying to illustrate. How do you feel about any of that, Simone? If you're here, that is. Hello? Hello? Oh, fuck. Okay. Well, I mean, we're pretty much done anyway, so we've asked all the questions I have on my list here. We did a pretty deep dive with this one, honestly. This is probably the most in-depth conversation discussion we've had so far. But yeah, I don't know. I wasn't going to say anything else. I was just going to ask you what you thought about what I just said, Simone. Are you there? Are you free to talk? Just talk. If there's background noise or something, just talk. Just talk through it. It doesn't matter. We're almost done anyway, so go ahead if you can, I guess. And if not, tell me communicate with me. Tell me in our Discord chat right now if there's something wrong, because we're almost done. So it's like whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I'm okay now. But connections are okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you with that. With the priest. His views. He's a religious priest, and one point is also from a rural area. Um, so what we are going to expect for him to say or regarding that matter. So maybe because it would be a common thing that he would relate things based on his beliefs or being a priest. But in those parts, in the parts, I didn't agree with what he's saying because I didn't have much. It's not because I didn't have much religious background, but because we're from a different era, or we're from a different we're, I guess, the more conscious part of the world. I guess that these things are not the views on the social the societal roles of men and women are viewed differently now, or everyone has the right freedom, um, the freedom that they wanted to be, or something that we are free as a human beings. We have uh, the the freedom uh, that that our ancestors fight for in the old history way back, a really long history of human beings fighting for freedom and whatnot. But yeah, but there are also part of him. The priest said that he don't know, but he doesn't know what he wanted to really tell, what he wanted to say to Eugenia, maybe because it's just all he knows. It's just what comes to him. It's just what his belief teach him, or the his environment teaches him to do, or fixate him to think about. So what can he do? It's just I don't know if it's his fault for that way, but given that it's in set in the 80s or something, at least is a price. But yeah, it still depends on how we look at the world.
Right, exactly, and it has to do with perspective and subjectivity and all that. So it still comes back to it. So now that we are coming to 2 hours, I think we've pretty much said everything there is to be said. But now that we're at the end of the episode, I would like to give you the floor. Now you have anything you want to say, any closing remarks, anything that you didn't get a chance to talk about earlier that you want to talk about now. Feel free. The floor is yours. Go ahead. Say whatever you want.
Where I'm going to start about, maybe I just talk about I already talk about some parts, but yeah, I want to focus uh on the feeling of alienation or something, that the underlying context of this or the underlying messages of this movie, because this is the most successful one, or this is the most in-depth analysis that we have done so far, that there are a lot of things that I get understand more, not only by myself but also during this conversation. For example, the feeling of alienation itself, that we as a human being, that it could be a problem, but it's also something that makes us a human being, that there are a lot of uncertain things, but that we as human beings encounter in life, problems and whatnots. But it's essential for us to develop as an individual. To That's why uh, I guess that it's also one reason why art exists. That we wanted to find to explain things. Human beings in nature are searching for meaning. But yeah, but in our modern society now, we have the freedom to do so. So why not use this opportunity to be more, or to improve as an individual? So I guess that there are some risks or the negative effects of these things, that for example, the feeling of depression or some mental problems that you'd encounter. It's, I guess that it's normal, but it's just that I don't know, it's just romanticism, or saying that the goods in it, there are goods in it, but as we just need to be moderate, or we have to have the control on our lives, that no we have the freedom to think what we wanted to think, or to get the knowledge that we wanted to know, or something. Just make the most out of our freedom, or that, yeah, to improve as an individual.
To improve as an individual. And with that being said, we have come to the end of episode 17 of the Imperial Tides podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if you did, and like and comment. Fight with us in the comments if you want. Get into an argument with us. Let's do it. Let's have fights on the internet. We try to upload new videos every week, but it really just depends on how we both feel, and scheduling and all that. But yeah. Tune in next time for probably a similar movie. We'll probably do another one like this, and like Mishima. I like these ones. We're going to take a long break from Shakespeare, so not a lot of that for a while. But yeah, until next time, see ya.